Hi, I'm Hobie-Wan. This is Red Chair Reading. I'm reading Midnight by Dean R. Koontz. Scariest book I've ever read in the history of reading, and I've read a lot of books. All right, Chapter 10, let's go. Thomas Shaddack drifted in a perfect blackness that was neither warm nor cool, where he seemed weightless, where he had ceased to feel any sensation against his skin, where he seemed limbless and without musculature or bones, where he seemed to have no physical substance whatsoever. A tenuous thread of thought linked him to his corporeal self, and in the dimmest reaches of his mind he was still aware that he was a man. An Ichabod Crane of a man, 6 feet 2, 165 pounds, skinny guy, lean and bony, with a too narrow face, a high brow, and brown eyes, so light they were almost yellow. He was also vaguely aware that he was nude and afloat in a state-of-the-art sensory deprivation chamber, which looked somewhat like an old-fashioned iron lung, but was 4 times larger. The single low-wattage bulb was not lit, and no light penetrated the shell of the tank. The pool in which Shaddack floated was a few feet deep, 10% solution of magnesium sulfate in water, for maximum buoyancy. Monitored by a computer, as was every element of that environment, the water cycled between 93 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature at which a floating body was least affected by gravity, and 98 degrees, at which the heat differential between human body temperature and surrounding fluid was marginal. He suffered from no claustrophobia. A minute or two after he stepped into the tank and closed the hatch behind him, his sense of confinement entirely faded. Deprived of sensory input, no sight, no sound, little or no taste, no olfactory stimulation, no sense of touch or weight or place or time, Shaddack let his mind break free of the dreary restraints of the flesh, soaring to previously unattainable heights of insight and exploring ideas of a complexity otherwise beyond his reach. Even without the assistance of sensory deprivation, he was a genius. Time magazine had said he was, so it must be true. He had built new wave microtechnology from a struggling firm with initial capital of $20,000 to a $300 million a year operation that conceived, researched, and developed cutting-edge microtechnology. At the moment, however, Shaddack was making no effort to focus his mind on current research problems. He was using the tank strictly for recreational purposes, for the inducement of a specific vision that never failed to enthrall and excite him. Except for that thin thread of thought that tethered him to reality, he believed himself to be within a great, laboring machine, so immense that its dimensions could be ascertained no more easily than those of the universe itself. It was the landscape of a dream, but infinitely more textured and intense than a dream. Like an airborne moat within the eerily lit bowels of the colossal imaginary mechanism, he drifted past massive walls and interconnected columns of whirling drive shafts, rattling drive chains, myriad thrusting piston rods joined by sliding blocks, to connecting rods that were, in turn, joined by crank wrists, to well-greased cranks that turned flywheels of all dimensions. Servo motors hummed. Compressors huffed. Distributors sparked as electrical current flashed through millions of tangled wires to far reaches of the construct. For Shaddack, the most exciting thing about this visionary world was the manner in which steel drive shafts and alloy pistons and hard rubber gaskets and aluminum cowlings were joined with organic parts to form a revolutionary entity, possessed of 2 types of life, efficient mechanical animation and the throb of organic tissue. For pumps, the designer had employed glistening human hearts that pulsated tirelessly in that ancient lub-dub rhythm, joined by thick arteries to rubber tubing that snaked into the walls. Some of them pumped blood to parts of the system that required organic lubrication, while others pumped high viscosity oil incorporated into their into other sections of the infinite machine were tens of thousands of lung sacs functioning as bellows and filters. Tendons and tumor-like excrescences of flesh. Excrescences? Excrescence. An abnormal outgrowth or enlargement. Excrescent. Growing out abnormally, excessively, or superfluously. Well, we learned something today. Now back to the show. Tumor-like excrescences of flesh were employed to join links of pipe and rubber hoses with more flexibility and security and surety of seal than could be attained with ordinary, non-organic couplings. Here was the best organic and machine systems wedded in one perfect structure. As Shaddack imagined his way through the endless avenues of this dream place, he was enraptured, even though he did not understand or care what ultimate function any of it had, what product or service it labored to bring forth. He was excited by the entity because it was clearly efficient at whatever it was doing, because its organic and inorganic parts were brilliantly integrated. Here's the part where I go. If this is interesting to you, please be sure to boop the like button. You'll help the video spread to other people, and thank you very much. All of his life, for as many of his 41 years as he could recall, Shaddack had struggled against the limitations of the human condition, striving with all his will and heart to rise above the destiny of his species. He wanted to be more than merely a man. He wanted to have the power of a god, to shape not only his future, but that of all mankind. In his private sensory deprivation chamber, transported by this vision of a cybernetic organism, he was closer to that longed-for metamorphosis than he could be in the real world, and that was what invigorated him. For him, the vision was not simply intellectually stimulating and emotionally moving, but powerfully erotic too, as he floated through that imaginary semi-organic machine, watching it throb and pulsate. He surrendered to an organism that he felt, not merely in his genitals, but in every fiber. Indeed, he was unaware of his fierce erection, unaware of the forceful ejaculations around which his entire body contracted, for he perceived the pleasure to be diffused throughout him, rather than focused in his penis. Milky threads of semen spread through the dark pool of magnesium sulfate solution. A few minutes later, the sensory deprivation chamber's automatic timer activated the interior light and sounded a soft alarm. Shaddack was called back from his dream to the real world of Moonlight Cove. Wow, I didn't see that coming. That's the end of chapter 10. Yeah. Thank you for joining me. I'll catch you again in chapter 11.